listen up, y'all. It's the queen of automation, Megan Donnelly, here to give you inspiration. Founders and business owners gather round. I'ma show you how to build systems that'll astound. Streamline your processes, no need for complication.
Hello and welcome back to the Queen of Automation podcast. I'm your host, Megan Donnelly, founder of the Digital Unicorns, where we transform digital chaos into streamlined success. Can you believe it's 2025? Me neither, but we're kicking off the new year with a bang. Whether you're a seasoned listener or tuning in for the first time, we're thrilled to have you join our journey to teach others how to simplify their lives. This year, we're diving deeper into the world of automation, sharing cutting-edge strategies, and bringing you insights from industry trailblazers. Our mission? To help you reclaim your time, boost your efficiency, and elevate your business operations to new heights. Here's to a year filled with innovation, growth, and of course, a touch of digital magic. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to John Carpenter. He is a good networking friend, and we are in the Brand Built community together, and I'm super excited to introduce you all to him because he has one of the hardest jobs, in my opinion, in the world, which is he's in recruiting, which if you're a people person, recruiting is awesome, right? Like I could never do that because I would not be able to sit through, the people that are just really bad at interviewing. It would be so hard for me to keep a straight face. But the reason that John is such a, let's say, cool cat, if you will, right? Like a cool part of recruiting is because he comes at it from a different point of view. And I'm going to let him jump in and tell you where he's calling from and tell you all about himself because I really love his take on the recruiting industry and how he likes to recruit people and humans. He calls them, you don't recruit for the position, you recruit for the human. And anyway, I'm just going to let him jump in and tell you all about himself because he's a very cool guy. Take it away, John.
So John Carpenter, I'm calling in from Cleveland, Ohio, but 19 degrees coming soon. And it is funny you said that because I was called the anti-recruiter the other day, only because of I guess I call out things and that the people are afraid to say. And because I own my business and because I'm able to make that decision, like that's what's important to me is actually do that. Like I honestly feel like somebody's got to speak for people. And yes, you said recruiting. It's one of the toughest jobs. It is so hard, but I am a people person. I've been in retail I was in retail for 19 years, actually started in hotels for 2 years, retail for 19 years, and now, recruiting for almost 14. And it's always been about the people. It's always been about talking to people, finding people. I've been hiring for 30 years and it was always about doing the right thing and finding the right people. And really, the interview process for me was really just built on let's have a conversation. And I think that kind of goes against everything that anybody does because they have checklists and they have, this kind of stuff. And I am adamant that you just have to have a conversation with somebody in order for it to work.
You have to do what we're doing right now.
Exactly.
But like the good recruiters, here's how everyone's read my backstory. If you followed me for more than 5 minutes, you know I spent a bunch of time in corporate America, right? And the best recruiters make that life and that job so easy. But the ones that are not great, maybe not people, I don't even try to how do you say it? They just maybe shouldn't be recruiters. It makes the process horrible because recruiting for corporate or recruiting for bigger companies is and interviewing for bigger companies is all really, it's nerve-wracking, right? And if you have fear of talking to people or fear of interviewing, maybe you're not the best interviewer, like having a recruiter, someone like John, to kind of ease the tension and just break the ice and just make it a conversation, not reading a script, here's all the questions I have to ask you, or finding a different way to ask those questions and not making the person feel nervous. It's a real skill. It's incredibly challenging. I own my own business. I interview people and
it's incredibly challenging. And I sometimes feel like, oh crap, when I get off the phone with people, I'm like, I didn't ask the right questions because I don't have a scripted list of questions. I go in thinking about the personality that I want for the position. And I know you talk about that a lot. So I'd love to hear your take on this. So like when I'm hiring for my own business, I think about the need the need I have, this is what I need right now, right? Like this is the person or the position that I need to fill. Who do I want? Like, what's the personality that needs to fill that position? And then I think about how do I want the customers, my clients, people who are working with me, how do I want them to feel if they're working with this person, right? Like if it's a developer, they're not necessarily customer facing all the time, but if they do, like they should be analytical and people should feel like okay, I don't really know what he's talking about, because you hire a good developer and not everybody knows what they're saying, right? So I would love to hear your take on that, because I can imagine in the hospitality world where everybody is being hospitable or not hospitable. Like, how does that even
It actually,
affect your job?
yeah, it started for me actually when I was 20, and I didn't know. Like my manager at the time told me, "There's an interview in there. I have to take care of a customer. Go in there and talk to them, find out why they want to work here, and if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me." So I was like, "Okay, well, I haven't interviewed
Ouch.
anybody at that point, but I just went in and started talking to him and just had a conversation, and the personality stood out. Right, that was what was important. Like I had a resume. They worked at, two other retail places or whatever.
Right.
And I didn't care about that. I didn't even pick up the resume. Like I actually had them tell me where they were from and what they did and what they liked about retail and what they liked about talking to people and dealing with them. And it was all about personality. And so the funny thing now is hospitality is all about the guest, but they just lean on so many technical aspects of everything. That's where the struggle comes in, is the technical aspects of things. Like you need, 5 years experience with this software system or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. I just had this conversation with somebody the other day. It was for a director of finance, and they said, well, they don't have our system. And I said, no, but they've worked with 6 other systems. So I'm sure they can learn your system because they're really not that different. And, they agreed and they interviewed them and they're moving them through the process. I think most of the time there's 2 conversations you have to have. You have to have the conversation with the candidate, right, to get their personality.
Yep.
But then you have to have the conversation with the company if they don't believe in the person, and kind of say, look, here's why, I'm sending them over. I think the big thing is, as you know, Queen of Automation, right? Where so many people are
Yes.
leaning on that automation aspect. They're pushing out there that, our ATS is going to catch this, and they're, fill your resumes with keyword. Bottom line is, at the end of the day, somebody's still reviewing every one of those resumes. And yes, you might, because even the knockout questions can be lies. Like you can say yes when you don't have it and you get through. And so I know that when we post a job, we'll get 100 resumes. I still got to weed through them all. If they're not in the United
Yep.
States, I can't use them, but the rest of the people I will go through. And so, and you've honed it in 7 to 10 seconds, not a fit, go, like, and let them down, reject them. And then I really look forward to the conversations with people, because that's where I get to find things even still 13 years later that I didn't know. So,
Right.
I mean, I've probably placed 1,000 people in the last 13 years and talked to 20,000 people at least, if not more. And like, you still learn something new every day just by talking to somebody.
So we're going to come back to the technology thing, because I want to talk to you
Mhm.
about that. But I also want to talk to you about, because I feel like, especially in the hospitality industry. So I have been waiting and dying to ask you this question, because from both sides of it, like from the recruiting side of it and from the being, the people in the industry who are working the jobs that you're recruiting for, hospitality seems to be, and I've never actually worked directly in the industry. So I don't know the answer to this, so I can't wait to hear it. The whole work-life balance thing that's out there, when people talk about work-life balance, and I personally believe it doesn't exist. We have one life. It's all the same. You can't technically physically separate it. Like you can't, like you only have one life, right? So you can have personal things that you're working on and business things that you're working on, but it's still one life. So I go after or I promote, build for a lifestyle. Build your lifestyle. Don't build your career. Like, what's the life? What do you want your life? Excuse me. What do you want your lifestyle to look like? What do you want your life to be?
Yeah.
Where do you want to be? Where do you want to live? Like, what car do you want to drive? Like, pick your lifestyle, and then you do everything else around that, and you focus on your lifestyle and your big life goals, right? So I would love to hear that from the hospitality point of view, only because that's a 24-hour, 7-day a week job.
Yeah.
If you're in the hospitality industry, you're always making the customer happy, or like that's supposed to be the goal, right?
Yep. And that is the thing when they chose, and that's the key word, choose, right?
Yes,
A lot of
choose.
people choose to go into the hospitality industry. At least they did, 20, 30 years ago. Now I think what happens is they might go because their family members were in it or whatever, and it's changed. I mean, now with check-ins that are automated and you're not talking to, people all day long, it's different than what it used to be. That being said, it is a massive push for candidates right now to consider themselves work-life balance. That's what they want out of it, because they're used to pre-COVID, they were used to working 100 hours a week. I mean, like you said, that was it. Like they
Yeah.
chose to be in this industry. They chose to work 6 to 7 days a week. They chose to move across the country 6 times. They chose all this stuff. Since COVID, it's all changed. It's all been, I only want to work 8 to 10 hours now. I don't want to move. I want to,
Yeah.
I want to be home. I want to take my kids to soccer and all these kind of things. And the candidates see this. The companies are having a hard time with it. Like they haven't adjusted, and some of them are starting to adjust. And that's, in the content that I share, some of it is about like they need to do some split shifts or find a way to take care of your employee, like have them work 9 to 2 and then come back 5 to 9 or something, so that they have that time with the family. But it is a very big push in the industry for work-life balance because it wasn't there prior to COVID. And then the industry basically shut down for 2 years. And now that it's back, the companies really want somebody who wants to put in 100 hours, and the people don't want to do it. So yeah, they chose this. And actually I say that only because there was a company that I worked with a couple years back, and his first question was, why did you get into hospitality? And if they did not answer with, I chose hospitality, it was that he ended the
wouldn't
interview.
hire him.
He didn't, not even that he wouldn't hire him. He ended the interview. Like,
Wow.
so like if you said I chose hospitality because you were good to go, but if you said my friend told me to come apply 25 years ago, so I just applied, that was the end of the interview. He wouldn't even go.
Oh man.
That's, I think, speaks a little bit to the industry and a little bit on why it's a little bit different than most.
I was going to say, talk about closing doors. I mean,
Right.
you're missing some really great people, and just because they didn't choose it doesn't mean they don't love it. That's
Right. They
crazy.
fell in love with it after. I mean, they've been in it for 25 years. What does it matter at this point?
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't even imagine how much it's changed. And like you were saying, everything, there's less people and more automation, more systems, and more, technology backfilling where the people are.
Yes.
And do you think, and let's actually just jump into that, because you were talking about like automations and systems, and it's really hard because people are so afraid of technology, right? So from both sides, from the users and from the owners. And I can totally understand where the owners are like, well, they don't know my system. And because there's a fear on the owner side of, oh gosh, how long is it going to take to train them? How long are they going to take to learn the system? And there's definitely, and it's all based on the age too. I mean, there's definitely some ageism, because the older you are, they just automatically assume that you're not going to be able to pick up the technology as quickly, which isn't necessarily true. But I can't even imagine how it's affected the hospitality industry because of, like you said, right now there's automated check-ins and there's all these things that are replacing people.
Yep.
How big of an impact has it made on like the recruiting and actually hiring process? Because some of those like front desk jobs are just gone, and those are the people, those are the jobs that people wanted.
Yep. It's actually bigger than that. So there's bartenders now, like they'll make like, it's a little kiosk that sits off the side of the bar. They make or dispense like 12 different drinks and beers.
It's crazy.
Now they'll also ask you for the tip, and the tip goes to the bartenders who are working the bars. But eventually, is that just going to take over the entire thing, right? So, and
Yeah,
then
why would they?
right, one of the largest companies built a revenue generating software. They have 1,500 hotels. They built a revenue generating software. They kept it in place for 4 years when it was doing its job, and then they said, well, since it's doing its job, we're going to eliminate 10% of our workforce that uses it because it's doing its job. So they cut all that back. So yeah, like it is a very, very interesting thing about like how automation's coming at this industry. And they've always had it though. So the industry's always had a challenge with what they call OTAs, the
Yeah.
booking.coms, the
Yep.
TripAdvisor, stuff like that.
Yep.
Because they lose out on that sale. They get the money, but they still lose out a little bit. So now you got another thing coming at them, right? You got automation coming at them. You got AI coming at them. So now there are some hotels like the Moxies and those kind of properties, Citizen M's, that are really driven towards the people that are, generational, and they really want that let's not talk to anybody kind of feel.
Yep.
But the one thing you're never going to lose is a 4 or 5-star property, no matter what, because you have to have so many employees on staff to get your star ratings.
Okay.
So, like, if they want to maintain a 5-star relationship, they have to have that many employees on staff to do it. So, while they'll incorporate AI and automation into the processes, they can't lose the people. So,
Well, and
even when
there's a part of that. I don't mean to cut you off, but like I want right there that there's a part of that too. Like you have a 5-star rating for a reason.
right,
You have a 5-star reading because there's a human emotional like thing happening between
Mhm.
you and the staff. You're not
Yep,
going to get that from a robot. You're not going to get that from an AI. You're not
no,
going to get that from the little bot that comes down the hallway with room service. I mean, like there's all these things I've seen. There was that in a restaurant, and I've seen it
yep,
downtown. Matt, like they have
yep.
these little delivery bots that drive around.
We have a shopping plaza that's outside here called Crocker Park, and they
Yeah.
have 2 security robots. That's all. That there's 6 cameras around it, and it just trolls up and down the sidewalks looking for problems, and then
What's
the
the
police.
security robot gonna do? Like, what does it have? Like a taser or something?
No, it literally, if it sees an issue or if it sees someone being in trouble, they'll call the police. That's all. So I don't think it's
Sorry, it's
stopped
not
them.
funny, but
It is, it's replaced the security guard driving up and down. So
some of this stuff is just insane. Like,
right.
it's just insane to me. So that's interesting. I actually never knew that about the stars. I
Mhm.
was always curious. I figured it had to do with the level of service, which
Yeah.
generally means more people, because in the service industry, you have a person that does pretty much everything, right? When you get to 5 stars.
Mhm.
Um,
And it does. I mean, they
it's
do need
really crazy.
amenities in order to do it, but
Yeah.
you need 2 things: amenities and people. So yeah, yeah,
So
it's crazy.
hopefully, so
Yeah.
you hear that, everybody who's listening, just book at 5 stars from now on if you actually want human
If you want to
interaction.
talk,
If you don't want to talk to anybody, then you can look up the Moxie resorts and go there.
there is some
Mr. Luke
industry. There is some
Matthews.
in the industry that are staying old school. Like Drury Hotels is staying old school. Like they really
Yeah.
put people in that they love their job. And I think that that's what they look for, is people who love their job. And so
Yeah.
somebody who wants to talk to people, and that's still where the industry should be.
I
I
agree.
also feel though that your HR teams are so overwhelmed, and they do welcome AI and automation, but they're skipping things when they say, we hear it all the time. I've applied twice to this job, but I haven't heard it sold back. I haven't heard anything.
Yep.
And then we'll send the person over and they're like, "Oh, we'd love to talk to them." And I'm like, "Cool," because they applied twice and you didn't talk to them before. They go into their ATS system and like, "Oh, there they are. Now we see them." Like it's just kind of like they don't have time either. So,
That's a great, but so that's a great segue into like my world, right? When you talk
Mhm.
about all of this stuff, if you're gonna automate, I tell people all the time, if you're gonna do it the right way, right? Like
Yeah,
if you're gonna go all in and you're like, I'm doing this, I'm going to automation, you have to make sure all of that stuff, the behavioral notifications and all of that stuff that affect the end customer, end user, are in place.
yeah,
Now, does that mean you automate everything? Absolutely not. You can't. You shouldn't. But if you're going to, do it the right way, right? Like, because there's no reason that in a system like that, there isn't an automated response like, hey, we got this. And then they send either a task notification or some sort of notification to the person who's supposed to review the resume, should have received a notification, should have received an email, should have received a slap in the face
Yep.
from the from the computer, and maybe they just ignore it. There's that too. Like people, unfortunately, if you can't ignore the notifications, and there is that too.
Right.
But there's no reason that it can't work.
No.
There's absolutely no reason it
Operationally,
can't work.
operationally, the industry switched a lot. Like some of the big brands, Marriott, Hilton, they have the digital keys, so you don't need to actually have a key card anymore. Things like that help save. I mean, back
That's
end.
my favorite feature, by the way. Sorry, I just have to say that's my favorite feature.
That Bluetooth is amazing. So, but now you go to restaurants, right? And you scan the QR code and you're like, I don't want to scan a QR code. And then you got to scroll through this menu that is
on your
nice
phone and yeah.
Yeah. And so the other thing that I noticed the other day in one of the hotels was that I had stayed at, the elevator was broken. And the guy's like, you're on the third floor. We can help you if you wait a few minutes, and I'm like, no, I'm okay. I've got this. But then
what was he going to do?
He was going to help me carry my luggage upstairs. Right. But like it was the service level, because he was actually the general manager of the hotel, not just the front desk person. And it was 7:00 at night and he was still there because his elevator was broken. So the service aspect is still there in some properties. Sadly, though, the whole thing, he said, just come down. Our shuttle will be here for you in the morning when you leave at 5 a.m. The shuttle was nowhere to be found. So I had to call an Uber. And, so operationally, it was still dropped, right? But the industry just hasn't changed all that much, but they're trying. And I think the software piece is where it really comes to the automation side of things. They get the booking, they make the sale. When we talk to companies that are looking for salespeople, though, they really want somebody who's going to hit the ground running. They're going to go into the community, talk to people, knock on doors, all that kind of stuff. They can't just sit in there and wait for a lead. The industry's leaned on that. The industry has been like, the last 4 years is like, okay, where's our leads coming from? But they don't want that now. They want them in the community talking to people.
I didn't realize that they actually had, do hotels have salespeople like that?
Yeah.
Like, what are they getting leads for? See, this is a whole nother, we could probably have this conversation for days. So what are they sending people out? Obviously, they're not sending people out to talk to, just customers, like someone like myself. I'm assuming you're talking, B2B?
Yeah, B2B. So anybody who might, bring people to the area,
Gotcha.
or weddings, events, hosting Christmas parties, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
It's still some hotels are still really driven to the community aspect of networking. Not as many if you're going to a large city like Chicago, New York City, they don't. But it's the small towns that really drive that. And they tell you that, this person has to go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings. They have to belong to BNI. They have to get out into the community. They can't just hope and pray that it's going to work. Now, the interesting thing is, I said this the other day, there's 2.3 million people in hospitality. Less than 100 people, I would say, are probably social selling on social media. And I think that that's where we have not changed, right?
Right.
They need to change. And Don Barnett's also in our group, and he is one that really is a big proponent of that. But he's and he's done it. But I have stories of people who started to create content on LinkedIn. Their company came by and said, this does not match our brand. You either stop or you don't work for us anymore. And they were like, then I don't work for you anymore. And they found a company that would allow them to do it. So which is more important, keeping the good people and letting them just do something on LinkedIn or social media, or letting them go and finding a robot to do the job? So
it's really hard because, some companies, I actually had that working, and I'm a digital tech person, and there are some companies that just don't, you are not allowed to post on LinkedIn about the company, which I guess I get, in case they post something bad, but they're also, they look for people that aren't posting about, you as a recruiter, do you go out and look at their social profiles to see and man, maybe they shouldn't be posting that to the world. How much of that actually comes into play when in the recruiting industry?
It was about 2016. I was working with a property in South Beach, Florida, and it was a 4-star luxury property, and they were looking for a sales manager. And this is when we first realized it was really going to be a thing. We sent the candidate over, and the first thing the HRD did was go to Facebook, type her name in. And this poor girl was great at what she did. But like 4 years prior, was a partier. And so her Facebook was like her holding 2 beers with like, the pretzel necklace around, and like,
Yeah.
and then like every picture after that was similar to
Mardi
her
Gras
party.
beach style.
Exactly. And they said, nope, we're not going to hire. We're not even going to talk to her because of, her social media. And at that point, I went right to everybody, and I still go right to everybody. And I tell them they have to, like, LinkedIn's one thing, but your other social medias, make them private because people are looking. And
Yeah.
if you want to post what you want to post, if you want to rip on political parties, don't let other people see it. Like, make your friends see it. Like, now LinkedIn's a different beast, right? It's a business to business. It's a platform.
Totally different beast. Yeah.
But
For sure.
it's also, people.
I agree.
There
I
are
agree.
people out
So
there. There's
if
one
you were,
gentleman who just keeps like hammering home companies, you guys didn't do this right. And he calls out the company, and then he complains that he can't get hired. And I'm like, well, you've called out at least 10 companies in the last year. Why would they hire you?
It's one of those things, if you are going to be, and this is for all the younger people, the younger generation out there, like whatever, I'm not lecturing you, but take it as a lecture if you want. If you're going to do, like, all of my social media now is all business.
Yep.
So it's like, even my personal pages, it's personal content, but it's written in a way that's businessy, if that makes sense. It's not even businessy because I don't talk about the company, but I do memes that are appropriate. I do things that I know that when somebody's researching my name, they can go out and they can see it on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever you are, wherever you're going to see the same kind of similar content, even if it's lifestyle content and I'm talking about my kids or my mom or whatever, it still has the same feeling, and it doesn't overflow into what I'm doing in my personal life, like what I'm doing with my friends. And I have a really strict rule with my friends, is they're not allowed to take, like, if we're out at a Christmas party and we have too many cocktails, you are not allowed to take a picture of me and put it on social media. Like, I mean, I've had them, they've done it and they've deleted it, that's just my hard, fast rule. Like, I don't get in pictures with groups of people that, we do pub crawls sometime and have, like, we're human. We do things with our friends. Like, if you're into that kind of stuff, but it's just not something I advertise. And it's one of those choices. You have to either make that choice or you don't. Like, it is a choice. It's all a choice. And that's stuff that people look at. And whether they say they do or not, and whether they say they make judgments on that, they totally do. People judge you by what they see. They just do, unfortunately.
And that's the thing. Like, one of my employees said that he wants to call out some things, in the industry. And I said, okay, well, let's find a way to do this so that, if we look back on a leadership principle, absolutely call it out, but also end it on a positive note with a reason on how to fix it. Right. And so, which is what we've been doing. Like, when we call something out, it's not just, hey, we're going to hammer you. It's, here's how to fix it in the content.
Yep.
And I think that it helps out, and it kind of reacts to more people that way, as opposed to just yelling, into a void, basically.
Shit at the wall. Yeah. Well, and I think it's totally different too. Like, if you're looking to go work for someone else, they're looking at everything you're doing. If you're a business owner like myself, my brand is my personality, so I have a little bit of leeway, right? Like, I can swear on my podcast. I can call out things if I choose to, knowing full well that, okay, this group of people over here isn't going to like that, and maybe they won't work with me, and I can say, so what? Right? So that's really the fundamental choice between working for somebody and working for yourself. Is you have a little bit more control over working for yourself, but you also have to be really comfortable with, if I say this, 90% of the people are like, this group of people will not work with me. And you have to say, okay, go like this, rub it off, and the other people will. And I think that's a huge thing with recruiting, is people don't realize, like, you're choosing to work for someone else. You're
Mhm.
choosing to not be an entrepreneur, and that's fine. Good for you. Kudos to you. You want a job, but don't be stupid about it. Like,
And it is funny though because I have let companies go and I've been let go by companies because the one company I remember, he missed 5 interviews in a row. We set him up for him and he missed 5 in a row and I said, "Why
you
would?"
miss 5 interviews in a row.
And I said, "Look, this is not only making us look rough, it's making you guys look bad. Like, and your employer brand is getting hurt by every time you do this."
Oh
And
God.
he said, "Well, if you can't accept the way that we run our business, then we're just not going to work with you." And I said,
Oh, it was the employer that did
"Yeah,
it,
it
not the
was the
person.
employer." Yeah.
Jeez.
And I said, "That's fine because I can't work with an employer that is going to miss interviews when you're crying that you need people." Like,
That's
so, because then every time they would miss the interview, the candidate's like, "Well, they don't value my time. I don't want to reschedule." And I'm like, "I don't blame you." Like, so, you
that's
know,
horrible.
yeah.
Oh, man.
Now, look, we have the opportunity now with,
Ugh.
all this AI and automation that they get 27 notifications and
Yeah.
hopefully they actually pay attention. This was, not 2019, something like
Yeah.
that. So, but yeah, so it helps out. I think there is a lot of possibility that it's going to do good in the industry because the industry is slow to adapt to things like this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just now adapting to some of the softwares, right? And so, I mean, some of these people are
Crazy
still
to
using
me.
Excel spreadsheets, and like, I have nothing against Excel spreadsheets.
You know
Like,
how I feel about Excel
yeah,
spreadsheets.
it took me 2017, 2018, and it's funny. I always said this. We would install new software within our own business operationally, and I said we're finally into 2012, and it was 2017, 2018, and this
Yeah.
year when we finally got like fully into the cloud and like not server based anywhere and all this stuff, like I'm like, oh good, now we're at 2020,
Yeah.
like,
Woo,
so,
we made it.
right, everybody
You
else
in the
for
manufacturing industry. I
years,
feel
right?
like
Yeah, but
those are the two industries which I feel like are so funny. Like it's like hospitality, which is so needs some of this stuff to just help it bigger, faster, stronger. Like you're losing so much money if you did that. And same with manufacturing. It's like they spend all this money on the manufacturing side of the business and all the machines to make the stuff. But then operationally, like from a digital standpoint, they're just a hot mess. They're using green screens. I mean, they're just using such antiquated technology and software, and I was like, you don't realize like how much yes, it costs a lot to implement, but in the long run, like after fact, you're going to save so much money. But
yeah,
we could soapbox about that for hours.
nope.
We are totally at time, so I don't want to like overtake your entire day, but I'm so glad that you came, and I want you to tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure.
Talk maybe a little bit about what your, future looks like, your next step, how they can reach out if they want to talk to you about recruiting or otherwise.
Yep. The easiest way to find me is LinkedIn. I mean, I'm there every day, post sometimes twice a day. So, I have a lot to say, so I'll say it.
He's very shy. He's
Yeah,
very shy.
that's the best place to run into me is LinkedIn. But you can also just catch me with, our website, which is snellinghospitality.com. And then, yeah, we do recruiting in the hospitality space, but I also consult and coach with recruiting and hiring managers on how to make their processes better. So I'm open to any questions that, might revolve around that, whether you're scaling a business from one person to two, or you're trying to get from 100 to 200. It doesn't matter to me because I've worked with them all.
That's awesome. We'll drop that stuff in the show notes too, so you guys have an easy one-click button to go
Good deal.
find John and talk to him. And I thank you guys so much for listening. And remember, technology is only good when it works, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.